Long before forests stretched across continents, before flowers bloomed, and long before any fruit ever formed, Earth was already alive with plants. But these were not the plants known today. They were simpler, stranger, and far more ancient forms of life that existed hundreds of millions of years ago, in environments that no longer exist. These were the oldest plants ever found on Earth, and their story is not just about survival, but about transformation on a planetary scale. To understand these first plants, it is necessary to return to a time when life had only just begun to leave the oceans. For billions of years, life existed entirely in water. Microscopic organisms, including early algae, drifted through ancient seas, capturing sunlight and slowly altering the chemistry of the atmosphere. These organisms were among the first to perform photosynthesis, releasing oxygen as a byproduct, a process that would eventually reshape the entire planet. Scientists believe that some of these aquatic organisms began forming simple, plant-like colonies along shallow shorelines. These early forms lacked roots, stems, or leaves. They clung to moist surfaces, absorbing water and nutrients directly from their surroundings. The transition from water to land was not sudden, but gradual, taking place over millions of years as environmental conditions shifted and new adaptations emerged. One of the earliest known groups of land plants were similar to modern mosses and liverworts. These plants appeared during the Ordovician period, over 450 million years ago. Fossil evidence suggests that they formed low, dense bacteria across Vlažny ground, especially in areas close to water sources. They had no vascular systems, meaning they could not transport water internally, and so they remained small and dependent on constant moisture. The world they inhabited was vastly different from today. There were no trees, no grasslands, and no complex ecosystems on land. The atmosphere contained different concentrations of gases, and the land itself was largely barren, consisting of exposed rock and thin layers of soil. These early plants played a crucial role in changing that. As they spread across the land, they began to break down rock surfaces through chemical processes. Their simple structures trapped dust and organic material, gradually contributing to the formation of the first true soils. This transformation allowed other forms of life to begin colonizing land, creating the foundation for future ecosystems. Over time, plants began to evolve more complex structures. During the Silurian and Devonian periods, new forms of vegetation appeared, plants with primitive vascular systems that allowed them to transport water and nutrients internally. This innovation enabled them to grow taller and survive in a wider range of environments. Some of these early vascular plants developed simple stems and branching structures, rising above the ground to capture more sunlight. Their leaves were not yet fully developed, often appearing as small extensions rather than broad surfaces. Reproduction still relied on spores, which were released into the air and carried by wind. Among the earliest known vascular plants is Cooksonia, a small, simple plant with thin branching stems and spore-producing tips. It stood only a few centimeters tall, yet it represents one of the first steps toward more complex plant life. Fossils of Cooksonia have been found in regions that were once part of ancient continents, indicating that these plants were widespread during their time. As millions of years passed, plant life continued to diversify. By the late Devonian period, forests began to appear for the first time. These were not forests in the modern sense, but dense grupperovki of tall, primitive plants such as lycophytes and early ferns. Some species reached heights of several meters, creating layered environments that had never existed before. These early forests had a profound impact on Earth's climate and atmosphere. As plants grew and died, they accumulated organic material in vast quantities. In swampy environments, this material was buried and compressed over time, eventually forming coal deposits that still exist today. The removal of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and its storage in these deposits contributed to long-term climatic changes. The development of roots also marked a major turning point. Early root systems allowed plants to anchor themselves more securely and access nutrients from deeper layers of soil. This not only supported larger plant structures but also accelerated the process of soil formation, further transforming the landscape. Despite these advances, reproduction remained a challenge. Spore-based reproduction required Vlažny conditions, limiting where plants could thrive. This limitation would eventually lead to one of the most important evolutionary innovations in plant history: the seed. Seeds allowed plants to protect their embryos and survive in harsher environments. Unlike spores, seeds contain stored nutrients and a protective outer layer, enabling them to remain dormant until conditions were favorable for growth. This adaptation freed plants from their dependence on water for reproduction, allowing them to expand into new regions. Seeds allowed plants to protect their embryos and survive in harsher environments. Unlike spores, seeds contain stored nutrients and a protective outer layer, enabling them to remain dormant until conditions were favorable for growth. This adaptation transformation freed plants from their dependence on water for reproduction, allowing them to expand into new regions. With the rise of seed plants, new forms of vegetation began to dominate the earth. These plants were better equipped to handle environmental stress, and their ability to reproduce more efficiently gave them a significant advantage. Over time, they replaced many of the earlier plant groups that relied solely on spores. Yet even these early seed plants were not the end of the story. The true transformation of plant life came with the evolution of flowering plants, or angiosperms. These plants introduced entirely new strategies for reproduction, including the development of flowers and fruits. But this innovation would come much later, long after the first plants had already reshaped the planet. The oldest plants did not produce flowers, fruits, or seeds as they are known today. They were simpler, yet their impact was immense. They turned barren land into living ecosystems, altered the atmosphere, and paved the way for every form of life that would follow. Many of these early plant forms eventually disappeared. Some could not compete with more advanced species, while others were lost during periods of klimatische upheaval and mass extinction. Geological changes, shifting continents, and evolving ecosystems all played a role in determining which plants would survive and which would vanish. Fossil evidence provides only fragments of this ancient world. Impressions of stems, spores preserved in rock, and traces of early root systems offer clues about how these plants lived and evolved. In some cases, entire ecosystems can be reconstructed from these remains, revealing landscapes that are both familiar and alien. There is evidence suggesting that early plants interacted with microbial life in the soil, forming relationships that may have helped them absorb nutrients more efficiently. These early symbiotic relationships are believed to be the precursors of modern plant microbe interactions that are essential for ecosystem health today. Comparisons with modern plants help scientists understand these ancient forms, but the differences are significant. Many early plants had structures and life cycles that no longer exist. Their appearance, texture, and growth patterns were shaped by conditions that are no longer present on Earth. The story of the oldest plants is ultimately a story of beginnings. They represent the first successful attempt by life to move onto land and transform it. Without them, there would be no forests, no oxygen-rich atmosphere, and no complex ecosystems. Their legacy is visible everywhere, in the soil beneath the ground, in the Vosduch, and in the diversity of plant life that exists today. Every tree, every blade of grass, and every fruit-bearing plant is connected to those ancient beginnings. Yet the plants themselves are gone. The exact forms that once bekrivale the land have been replaced, their existence recorded only in stone. What remains is the impact they left behind, a transformed planet, capable of supporting the vast web of life that exists today. In the end, the oldest plants were not just early life forms. They were architects of the world as it is known, quiet, simple, and often overlooked. They changed everything, turning a lifeless landscape into a living earth.